Don't lose your way. Your mind, we have to be as one.
What's good, YouTube? Or Storm here, coming at you guys with another video today. So today I'll be talking a little bit about the circuit break set list. Now we pretty much have all the cards fully confirmed. So this video is kind of prepare you guys for Sneak this weekend, because sneak peek for circuit break is this weekend, especially if you're going to YCS London or YCS Dallas. You're probably going to Sneak because you want to get a hold of some of the key cards that you're going to need in your deck if you're going to be going to those events. Or in general, if you just want to go to Sneak like I am to pick up some cards and compete in a tournament, this is kind of for you. So it kind of gives you an idea of what you probably want from the set and what anything else. So we'll go ahead and get to it. So the promo card for the Sneak is Hallow. So Hallow is an interesting little card. It is the first Pendulum tuner without restrictions, because every other Pendulum based tuner we've had up until this card has some kind of effect that either prevents you from, it's like Luster Pendulum prevents you from making non-Draco Slayer monsters with it. White Wing Magician banishes itself. Noble Dragon can only be made with dragons. You're kind of getting the point here. This thing is a generic vanilla tuner. So that actually is really good. And it's got a decent scale. And that's overall, I really wish we would have had this thing when, we wish we would have a card like this before Master Rule 4, because obviously Pendulum is not really as strong as it was. Definitely got the biggest hits from the new new Link rules, but it's cool to see Konami supporting the mechanic, especially with the promo card. It tells me that they're actually they haven't forgotten the Pendulum mechanic's existence, which is really good. And so some other interest. So we're gonna kind of go over some other things in the set. There are some new Goki and Tricksters in this set, include Narcus, I believe, is one of the new ones that can special summon itself, and I forget what it burns. Every Trickster has a burn effect. She has a burn effect that when an opponent's monster activates hand or graveyard activates an effect, it burns. If your opponent takes fixed damage, it special summons itself. Level 4 Fairy, Light Fairy. Not too much to say here, just more Trickster support. And then of course we do have some new Goki cards. We have one new Link monster and Goki Headbat here, which is one of the new ones that it can it's in your hand. It can send a Goku monster to the graveyard from your hand to special summon it, and then it pumps up a monster. So having a Goki monster that can special summon itself is really, really good, and it sticks with the whole zero defense theme for the deck. So it synergizes pretty well with the deck. It is a Rota target, and it's just one more target for your Goki rematch. So it's pretty decent little card. Definitely something, if you're a Goki player, you'll be tracking this bad boy down. One of the new archetypes in this set, which I think I'll be profiling later this week. I have a deck list kind of basically ready for the deck, which is Rockets. So Rockets are one of the new archetypes in this set. There's an interesting deck because they're kind of like they're all dark dragons, which means there's some other things you can play it with, such as Destrudo, which I'll get to later, fits really well with this deck. And just generic dragon stuff, kind of like Dragon's Ravine can work, and Dark Worm works very well with this deck. And basically, they all have effects when they're targeted by a Link monster that they pop themselves and do something. This one happens to negate. One of the other ones sends a spell or trap. One of the ones sends a monster they don't target. And then they all have effects when they're destroyed during the end phase. If they're in the graveyard because they were destroyed this turn, you can special summon one from your deck except itself. So it's a pretty neat little deck. Ideally, you want to get the deck's boss monster, Borolo Dragon, on the board and have with these, because that's going to put your opponent in a pretty bad position. There's also cards like Gateway Dragon, which can special summon itself when you control a Link monster, and also has an effect to special summon a dragon from your hand. You have Sniffer Dragon here that can search a copy of itself when it's normal special summon. So overall, they're pretty neat little cards. Definitely something, definitely a little art deck to look out for, because it's not good now, but it could be good in the future. Then we have the Altergeist. This is a new archetype. I admit I don't know a ton about them. I've only seen a few videos of them. They're pretty cool. Being able to set, Altergeist spells and traps directly from the deck is always good. You remember True Dragos. This is a very similar mechanic. It's pretty neat. They're a pretty neat little deck. I'm not saying they're top tier shit or anything, but they're pretty decent. And then we also have Crawlers here, which are a flip effect archetype. It's a really weird deck when I've read some of their effects, because they sort of function float a lot. They don't do a ton, but they float, which is one of their kind of main win conditions, is floating into more things. I don't know if this crawlers just aren't very good, but they can be if they get their link monsters set up. Then we also have Metaphys, which is another new archetype in this set. This deck is very interesting because it's a banish focus deck, which we don't really have a lot of decks that focus specifically on banishing, and it's a really cool deck because I never thought Left Arm Offering into Gold Sarcophagus would be a play, but it is in this deck because Necroface is really good in Metaphys, because when Necroface is banished, it banishes 5 cards at the top of your deck, which is something that really, really helps this deck. And overall, I feel like it's a pretty neat deck. I'm kind of glad that, to see a deck that works like this, because it's really cool. And I'm not saying it's going to be meta or anything, but it's a pretty cool little deck, and they all are worms, so you never know what kind of crazy stuff people can come up with, such as True Kings or whatnot. Then there are a few decks getting legacy support, but I think there's a new Mermail and there's new Mecha. But the main card I think that I want to talk about is Arvada over here. This card's pretty neat because I actually seen it in some of the OCG Infernoid builds. So what it does is it has a quick effect to negate a monster effect by destroying a fire monster you control or in your hand. All the Infernoids are fire type monsters, so and it's a rekindling target, which granted rekindling's limited over here, but it is at 3 in the OCG, and it does have an effect when it's destroyed to target a fire beast warrior wing beast monster graveyard itself, special summon it, and it's negated or destroyed at the end phase. I think this is what Fire Kings have really, really been missing for so long, which is Island is a good card, Grunix is a good card, Yux is a good card, Bronze, it's a little slow for today's day and age, but the deck only has 3 or 4 good monsters, and this adds another good monster to the deck, which is good. So that's actually really good. Giving an older deck one of the missing cogs it's had for so long is really, really good. Definitely really happy with this card. Is probably one of the best generic support cards in the set. Then of course we have the aforementioned Justrudo. It is a rare, so that's really good. I've had a feeling this might be a secret rare, but it is a rare, and it is a level 7 dragon that if it's in your hand or grave, it can special summon itself by paying half your life points, and it targets a level 6 monster. It special summons itself, but its level gets reduced by that monster. So if you have this and any really monster below 6 or lower, you can make a level 7 synchro. So it is a dark monster, so you can send it with Armageddon Knight. It's dragon, so you can dump it with Dragon's Ravine and Dragon Shrine. And it has 1,000 attack, which means it's a card of constant target. So many things going good for this card. It's definitely a staple thing you are going to see in a lot of different decks in the TCG come Circuit Break. Expect to see this. ABCs love this card. It is really, really good. I've seen Spiral variants in the OCG that make great use of this card because Ancient Fairy Dragon's pretty dang good. And, of course, there are other... Being able to make a Black Rose Dragon to nuke your opponent's board before you make any of your plays is good as well. It's just a card I feel like, everyone should have a copy of this card because it is a rare, so it's not going to be the hardest thing to track down. And we have another card I think that's kind of flying under the radar here is Nimble Beaver. So Nimble Beaver's effect is pretty simple. It's normal summon. You can special summon level 3 or lower Nimble from your deck or grave. Very, very simple effect. Very simple. So it can target it. It can special summon itself from deck, which means it's a 1-card Mass Star Boy, which is one of the, the water attribute link monster. There's also some other Nimble monsters that can grab from the deck, but I'm not an entire expert, but I have seen some crazy things this 1 card enables. And I don't think it's a bad card to have a play set of because it's a good generic card, and it's very much like Tour Guide in that role. So it's definitely a card I definitely think that, even though it is a common, I think you should have your play set of it because it is a very, very good card. Then we have the cover card, which is Boral Load Dragon. I can't think the name is TCG names, but anyway, so it's a Link boss monster, and its arrows are actually really nice. It's one of the few Link monsters I think we've had that has Link monsters that only help you, and it's you and the thing I like about Bolo Dragon is its Link markers basically mean you can put it anywhere, and it's going to its markers are going to be relevant, and no matter what zone it's in. And first, it does require 3 effect monsters, and it's Link 4, which means it's not the easiest thing to summon. You're either using 4 monsters or using a Link 2 and 2 other monsters. But even though it's a little resource intensive, it's pretty decent because it can't be targeted by either player with monster effects, which can be relevant against spirals. Now you have to remember, You have to remember that Borlo Dragon, while it can simply be utility wired away, if you don't want to go into this going second against Spirals if you haven't baited their utility wire, but it is immune to Firewall Dragon, it is immune to Spiral Sleeper, and there are a lot of targeting effects running around that this thing can, with monster-wise, we don't have Dryden anymore, but Masterpiece is a card, and that's pretty good, and it also has an effect to reduce a monster's target when face-up monster on the field and it loses 500 attack and defense, and effects can't be activated to that. There's two things about this. One, this is really good if you have this with the rocket on the board, because you can activate this targeting the rocket will send a card and your opponent can't respond to it. So it kind of gets with that deck, it really helps. If you have this and a rocket on the board, it's going to put your opponent in a bad position. But Konami didn't just stop there. No, they gave it a third effect. When it started damage check, when it attacks an opponent's monster, you can place a card, that monster, in a zone this card points to. So the important thing to remember, those zones obviously have to be open, but this thing can break boards because it doesn't target. So hypothetically, let's say you're able to get rid of the set utility wire the Spiral player has, and you get into this, there's not a lot they can do. You can take their Firewall Dragon and bounce their own things and use it to clear their board. There's just a lot of really good things this card can do. Yes, it's hard to summon. That's definitely a thing, but it's definitely, if you don't have Firewall Dragon, this is the next best thing, and it's, in my opinion at least, obviously not everyone can get a hold of Firewall Dragons, but this thing won't be too expensive, and plus I like collecting cover cards. That's the other reason, why. And I think I'll probably have it in my Spiral list, if I'm completely honest. Then we have some of the Altergeist. The Altergeist Link monster, I believe it's a Link 3, and its effect is kind of considering the effort you're having to go into it. It's a little bit, it's not bad, but it just requires, the problem with a lot of the Link monsters we have right now is they're a little too resource intensive for the work you're having to put in to get into them. And I feel like, a lot of these, like Gokis could use a Link 2, and so could Altergeist. They just need a Link 2 that can make getting into their bigger Link monsters easier, which I think they'll get eventually. Then Black Cat Bat and Thunder Ogre are new support cards. I believe Black Cat Bat, I don't quite remember its effect, but it does have good Link monsters if you have it underneath Holy Angel. And it makes your opponent lose 200 attack every time your opponent takes damage. So it kind of is whereas it's kind of like Holy Angel's antithesis, where she gains attack, this one makes your opponent's monsters lose attack when they take damage. And it is a continuous effect, so that's pretty decent. And having 3 markers to summon monsters from the extra deck is not bad. Then a Goki Thunder Ogre gives you an extra normal summon to a zone it points to. Now the thing is, it has a zone that points to your opponent's monster, so you want to link this thing away ideally, but that's actually pretty decent. And it's not, but again, it is a Link 3. The deck needs a Link 2. The Gokis need much like Altergeist, they need a Link 2. Then probably one of the most hyped cards in the set, I think, because it's the best generic Link I think we have so far, is Akashic Magician. So Akashic Magician's effect is summoning conditions, very simple. 2 monsters with the same type. I think most decks can probably meet that summoning condition. You can summon this in ABCs pretty easily. You can summon this in Pendulum Magicians very easily. And its effect is that when it's Link summoned, it returns all monsters as points to the hand. So the thing about this card is that you can't exactly summon it in a main monster zone because it's going to bounce that monster there. So you kind of have to summon it early in Link climbing combos, but it does have a second effect, which allows you to, if you have it co-linked with another monster, you can excavate cards top of your deck equal to that, equal to those co-linked monsters. So you can mill potentially 8 cards, but most of the time you're going to mill 4, and you can mill controllably because you call the card name. Overall, it's a good generic Link, and I think if you're playing Pendulum Magicians especially, because this thing can outnumber 41, which I'll get to later, so it's definitely something to think about. So then the unfortunate thing I think with this set is a lot of the, which is kind of weird because normally it's the opposite. The anime archetypes are receiving rarity bumps, which is something we saw with Code of the Duelist. Squib Draw and Quick Resolve are the spell cards for. Squib Draw is basically sort of like it's kind of like a themed, kind of like a Magic Planner, except it pops the Volet and lets you draw 2 cards. And I believe the other one, Quick Resolve, allows you to special summon a Volet straight from the deck, but it's destroyed during the end phase. It's not once per turn. But they're secret rares, which means if you're trying to build rockets, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than normal to get a hold of them. So it's unfortunate, but it's definitely something that, and then of course we do have one-time passcode, which is a pretty neat little rare. It summons a 2000 token that's Cyber's type. So while I don't think that matters now, eventually we'll have some Link monster that will require one Cyber's monster and will be pretty dang good, and you'll want to play this. I'm not saying it's not a staple now, but it could be in the future. It's definitely a rare. I feel like it wouldn't be bad to have a playset of. One of the newer card, and another card is Rival. This is a card I've seen in the OC Trickster list. It's a very simple effect. It's a quick play spell that says normal summon during the battle phase, normal summon a monster. So in Tricksters, what they would do is you would use this to normal summon Candina to get a search on your opponent's turn, which is pretty good. I'm not sure what other decks, but there's a lot of different decks you can play this card in. It's kind of a weird kind of situational elite card, but in Tricksters it's not bad, and it is an ultra rare, so it's definitely not a card to think about. Then a card I think that's kind of weird, that's flying a little in the radar, is Excessive Burial. So it's kind of like a themed premature burial. So you activate it by discarding a monster, then target a monster in the graveyard that the level is less than the monster you ditched, and special summon. Then it's equipped, negates the monster. It's a little weird because you're using 2 cards to summon 1 monster, but it can help some decks to extend plays, and it is an equipped spell, which means Power Tool Dragon and can search it. I'm not sure how alive Power Tool Dragon deck is under Link rules, but having another good spell to search off of that is far from bad. Definitely kind of a niche card, but I'm sure someone will find a really cool use for it eventually. Then some of the newer cards, which one of the cards, this is pretty much, I think, the thing about this set, it's a lot like Invasion Vengeance. There's one real chase card that's a secret rare that pretty much everyone's one has evenly matched. So this card is going to change the way we play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's a very simple card that says, at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you can make your opponent banish monster cards from their field face down so they control the same number of cards as you do. If you control no cards, you activate it from the hand. This basically changes the way we play the game, because now if you build a board without a negation, a card that can negate this, your whole board is going to go -1 card. And there's not a ton of downsides deciding 3 of these things going second, barring opening all of them. And it's one of the few ways you're going to really break spiral boards until they get Tri-Gate Wizard, which fortunately Tri-Gate Wizard allows them to establish even a more sticky board. But anyways, this thing is something I feel like it may not be quite, judging from the OCG list, it's not played in everything, and it's going to be interesting to see, but I do think it's going to be a pretty expensive secret rare. It may not be as expensive as Barrier was at its height, around $60 to $70, but it is definitely the chase card of the set, and it's definitely a card that's pretty much going to change the way you play, because build a board will not be, that board won't be there if your opponent opens that evenly matched. Then Shutline's kind of one of the other cards I feel like that's people talked about it, and it's a very simple effect. Now that columns where cards are matters, it's very simple. It's a counter trap that says when a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated in the same column as this card, negates it and destroys it. So I really like it. This is probably easily the best column-based card I think we've ever had, and it's pretty decent. I don't know if how much card placement is going to matter, but you can set this in a zone that's opposite of your opponent's pendulum zone. To negate the pendulum effect, you can set this in the extra monster zone to prevent your opponent from activating an effect. There's a lot of different things this card can do. I don't know if it's going to see play because, Solemn Strike and all these other powerful traps are still at 3, but it's a card to keep your eye on. It's definitely something, a little techie kind of thing that can be useful in some situations. Now we're getting to new Vendreads and FAs. FAs are a little bit more playable with this new support. They are machines. That definitely helps. They're getting a new field spell, which isn't bad. The new Vendread stuff is actually pretty decent. However, I don't think either deck is really getting the support it needs to be. FAs are kind of like not going to be very good. I think we all know that, but they're better. And Vendreads are still, they're a little bit of ways from where they need to be a top tier deck. They're still going to rely on the good old zombie engine, which isn't bad, but it would be nice if Vendreads had enough support to play it on their own. And as far as the OCG imports, we're finally getting the Moonlight cards. These cards, everyone's been waiting for these cards. We are finally getting them. Crimson Fox was a V-Jump promo ages ago, but we're finally getting it. And if it's sent to the graveyard, it's a simple card. When it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target one face-up monster opponent controls, change its attack to 0. in a deck that can summon big monsters like that are like 2800 or even double that up to 5000 and attack twice, it's a pretty dang key effect. Fortunately, it doesn't trigger off of the Chick, unfortunately, but it's really good poly fodder. And then when it's sent to the graveyard, and when it's sitting in the graveyard and your opponent activates the effect that targets one of your Moonlights, you can banish it from the grave to negate the effect and they gain life for some reason. It does come up. It's definitely a thing that can protect your OTK pushes if your opponent happens to have something like Masterpiece out. And so yeah, pretty good card. Glad we're finally getting it. You know, it's kind of sad we get these after Broad Ball was banned, though, because Broad Ball kind of helped this deck, the consistency a lot. But he earned his ban, let's face it. Then we have Chick, which this is the kind of the card I think more people are looking forward to, because it can dump a monster from the extra deck, and it treats itself as that name. So basically, this allows you to turbo into the big fusion Leo Dancer really efficiently. On top of that, when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, it also grabs a poly back from your grave, and you know, if that wasn't enough, when it's banished, it turns off all monster effects during the battle phase. So that basically allows you to, in one card, you're able to set up your fusion plays, recycle your fusion plays, and you can turn off your... This basically fixes a lot of the problems the deck had, which was cycling back, getting the polys back from the grave. Now the deck has that, and it's really, really good card. I'm glad we're finally getting it. As far as the few other cards, this is the card I feel like it's a super rare, and it's a card you're going to stare down. It's not going to be fun, which is number 41, Bakuska. So this thing, it has two different effects depending on if it's an attack or defense mode. The attack position effect isn't usually going to matter, but it can't be destroyed by card effects. The main thing is, while it sits in defense mode, all face-up monsters in the field go to defense mode, and defense mode monster effects are negated. That's not fun. That's not a fun effect. And it basically means you're going to have a link monster to get to a link monster to get this off the board. You're going to have something to get rid of it. Like I mentioned earlier about Akashic Magician, and you're playing Pendulum Magician, that's why Akashic is so good, because you easily get into her and you can just purple poison over this and get it off the field. This is a card that you're going to have an out to, because you're going to see a lot of it, and it's a card everyone's going to have access to because it's super rare. So, not the most fun card, but you have to know it exists, and it's definitely a card that I feel like if you can get a hold of it, because everyone's going to have it. Then the main card I think that's kind of like going to set our next format is Spiral Double Helix. So this card, I have never seen a card basically fix every single problem a deck has and take it from a kind of rogue deck to a meta deck, and that's what Spiral Helix does. I've done tons of discussions on spirals, and we all know how good this card is and how good spirals are going to be when this set releases. This is definitely a card that everyone's going to want. It is an ultra rare, so it's not going to be that expensive, but everyone's going to want one because you're going to want to Reaper it away, obviously, if you're playing side decking Winter Cherries. So definitely a card that if you can get it at Sneak, I would. And if you're playing Spirals, you're going to need 2 copies. And if you're side decking Winter Cherries, you're going to need 1. So, but anyways, about comes to the end of the set review for Circuit Break. Let me know what you guys think of Circuit Break below. Are you guys going to Sneak? What cards are you hyped for the set? Let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. It's Storm signing out.